the NFL, with all these other leagues stopping business, stopping games, NFL free agency begins next week, as you well know. The NFL is going to be, they're going to have center stage, the B stage, the C stage. If this is like Lollapalooza, the NFL is on every stage because there's really nothing else going on.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that we obviously haven't heard anything about the NFL pushing back the start of free agency. And really what free agency has turned into is people checking their phones on Twitter to see who's signing. I mean, it's not really an event that anyone has to go to. There's not really what it's about. So I don't know if the NFL is actually going to ultimately push back the start of the new league year. It definitely has an impact on the draft front with pro days and top 30 visits. But you're right that the NFL, and not that they're trying to take advantage of this situation, but with free agency just being this huge event that is not where anyone needs to attend, we could really see, record ratings for shows or just have more people tuned into all these signings than there typically is.
Right. And I just think about what we do if it's a sports talk show, and if there aren't games going on, there's going to be a lack of things to talk about. And with free agency starting next week, of course, that's going to dominate the conversation, because if Tom Brady's on the move, if he stays put, if some other big-name quarterbacks sign here or elsewhere, I mean, a week from now, the coronavirus talk, there aren't going to be as many layers to go through. It's going to be repeating the same stuff. So I just see it where the NFL, and I'm not saying Roger Goodell's doing a Tiger Woods fist pump like, sweet, this plays right into our hand. But really, they're going to be center stage in the sports world for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of does play right into their hands. I mean, I think they're probably focusing most of their attention on what they're going to do with the NFL draft, especially because it's unique in that it was going to be in Las Vegas. The Raiders are moving there, entertainment capital of the U.S. They were going to have players that get picked come over across a boat onto a floating stage. It was going to be certainly an event that had a lot of attendance, but also just a made-for-TV event. And I don't really know if it can be without a lot of people in attendance. So I think they're probably, league executives, Roger Goodell, the owners, are in a weird way happy that they can still have free agency. But when it comes to such a unique and big, probably the biggest NFL draft that we've seen, I don't know if they can do it at this point. But because it's in late April, I don't think at this point they have to cancel anything yet. Can maybe wait these next couple of weeks to see how things are going in the country, and they could ultimately, the NFL, be a real big beneficiary of just the timing of when their big event is, the draft in late April, and the fact that free agency again is not an event that anyone needs to attend.
He's Chris Trapasso, covers the NFL and the NFL draft for CBS Sports. Do you see there being a major ripple effect when it comes to the NFL draft? There are some teams where the Chiefs, the Giants, they're not having a lot of their front office people go to the facilities for the next couple of weeks. Maybe some of the pro day attendance is impacted. How much do you think this impacts the teams putting their notes together when it comes to drafting players here in a little more than a month?
Well, I probably have a pretty unique take on this. Being a little bit younger and kind of growing up in my career, doing everything online, I've been a big proponent that you hear these stories about NFL scouts where they're away from their families for 40 weeks a year and they're traveling to Northwestern Texas A&M to scout a player, when everything's online today. All these teams get all the film they need. Truly, the combine, while it's fun to go to Indianapolis, don't really need to be there. All the interviews are taped. And I just saw a tweet today that every single pro day is filmed in its entirety and sent to every single team. So I think after this, what good could come out of this is that teams will start to realize, with a lot of younger GMs in the NFL too, that we don't have to just run our scouts into the ground, being on the road, being away from their families. We can make informed decisions using the combine, using analytics, using pro day, and certainly film without having to send these players or these scouts everywhere to evaluate these players. That's what I think should have been done over the past couple of years. This will kind of be a strange wake-up call that they don't have to have these scouts on the road nearly as much as they do.
When it comes to your personal free agent power rankings, from this standpoint, a little bit different. It could be a combination of who you're most interested in seeing stay put or go elsewhere, just for the name recognition, the entertainment value of it, and then also projecting the impact that those players could have. So a little bit of a combination there. Who are you most interested to find out about when free agency starts?
Well, it's got to be Tom Brady at the start. Although, like I said on the show months ago, that if you look back at his last 3 or 4 years, his stats had kind of been steadily declining, and he's 42 now. But he's the biggest name, so he'd probably be the top guy. I'm really interested in Dak Prescott, too, because he's it's such an interesting case with him in that he had a career season in 2019, but everyone realizes he's played behind a great offensive line. He has Zeke Elliott. They had Amari Cooper. They had Michael Gallup. Jason Witten re-signed with them this year. He's been in this great situation, and the reports are coming out that the Cowboys are not going to give him this big extension, but if anything, franchise him and maybe let him seek a trade. So I'm just interested to see if he signs with a new team and then to ultimately see how he plays in a situation that's probably not going to be as good offensively as what he had in Dallas. And the last guy probably is Jadeveon Clowney, in that I think he's a little bit more or he's a little bit overrated than the type of consistency that you get from him. He was a number 1 overall pick. He was a top recruit. I just want to see if the Seahawks re-sign him, if some mystery team comes in and gives him a gigantic deal and makes him the highest paid defensive player, and then obviously to follow him and see if he can become a more consistent player that doesn't just dominate a game and then is kind of invisible for a few, but if he can ultimately play up to what most likely will be a very lucrative contract.
By the way, what do you think Dak Prescott's market would be like outside of Dallas?
That's a great question, because for a lot of the reasons that I just pointed out, that I think the Cowboys know what they have with him and the situation is good. I think just because of the rising salary cap and that this new TV deal is most likely going to hit, probably $30 million a year, which seems crazy, but we're going to start to see quarterback contracts hit $30 million per season. But I do believe that there are a lot of teams that like what they saw from Dak Prescott in 2019, setting career highs. He's a young quarterback, but are kind of like, oh, well, yeah, the offensive line, Zeke, great receivers. I don't know if we want to commit $30 to $35 million and get in a bidding war, maybe pay him more than that when our situation isn't as good as the Cowboys. That's kind of how I feel about Dak Prescott, too. So I think just the business side of things, I think he could get over $30 million. Would, in a vacuum, I pay him $30, $35, $38 million a year? Probably not. Unless I was a GM of a team that had a good offensive line, had great receivers, had a franchise running back, and not every team has that. I think the best case scenario for him is to stay in Dallas, even if he has to eat a few $1 million. When you're making $35 million a year, what's, sacrificing a few million when you know your situation is better there than it would be on another team?